Ever since 2011's Rise of the Planet of the Apes was released, jokes about the movie's quote-unquote long title have run more and more rampant, as well as a growing debate among fans regarding whether that film, along with Dawn and War, were given the correct names. I'm here to break down these discussions and tell you why I defend the titles of the Planet of the Apes movies. If you like what I do here and want to show your support, be sure to hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on all things apes. Enjoy the video. And welcome back to Ape Nation, your number one source for all things Planet of the Apes on YouTube. My name is Josh, and today I have a smaller, somewhat sillier conversation I wanted to dive into, but it's one that has been a part of the Planet of the Apes fan base and discussed among film fans in general for the last several years, and that is the debates surrounding the titles of the Planet of the Apes films. For whatever reason, these movies, as loved as they are, have always gotten flack from people in a few different ways regarding their titles, and I am here to defend them. I've broken this video down into 3 sections, technically 2, but one of them is kind of a two-parter, and so I'm going to present what the general argument is and then give my defense against it. So with all that said, here we go. So the first thing that is often brought up with these movies, I see it more from general audiences, but I see it with actual fans as well as film fans in general, and that is that the titles are too long. Whenever I hear people say this, I just kind of go, what are you talking about? Why are they too long? And they say it's too wordy, it goes on too long. And it doesn't make sense to me for a couple of reasons, but the biggest reason to me it doesn't make any sense is because 3 of the biggest franchises of the last 20 years have multiple films with titles that are as long as, if not longer, than most of the Planet of the Apes titles. And those 3 franchises are Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and Harry Potter. You look at all the Harry Potter movies, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Like, these are titles with like 6, 7, 8 words each movie. Same with Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Like, these are long titles. Star Wars is the greatest offender with Star Wars Episode something, something of the something. Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. Like, these are long titles. So when someone says, oh, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, these are long titles. What I just don't get is, why do we get this complaint about this particular franchise, but we don't get it about any other franchise? So that is the first argument I wanted to address, is that the titles are too long. I don't understand why you say they're too long. And that being said, even if you were to say, okay, well, those titles are too long too, are they really that long? Is it really that big of a deal that they're called that? You know what I mean? And also the other thing is, people shorten these titles all the time. When they refer to a Star Wars movie, they're not just going to say the full title, they're going to say Revenge of the Sith, or they'll say The Force Awakens. When someone says a Harry Potter movie, they'll say The Sorcerer's Stone, or they'll say The Prisoner of Azkaban. When someone refers to a Lord of the Rings movie, they'll say The Two Towers or Return of the King. They're not going to say the full title. And the same goes for Planet of the Apes. Someone says, oh, what's your favorite Planet of the Apes movie? Oh, it's Dawn. Oh, it's Escape. Oh, it's Conquests. Like, I really don't understand the argument. Again, this is a very silly, arbitrary kind of conversation, but I just wanted to address it because I thought it would be fun, and it's something that's always been on my mind. So the first thing, I just don't understand the too long argument. It doesn't make any sense to me. Now, a part 2, and technically my second point, but a part 2 to the too long argument is the titles are repetitive. They have the of the twice, right? And this is the one that I don't agree with, but I at least understand where people are coming from with it. If you feel this way, it's totally okay. I know, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I just don't get why that's an issue. Why is it such an issue that there's 2 of those in the title? For me, it rolls off the tongue, and it's a better fit for the Planet of the Apes franchise than Planet of the Apes subtitle. Every other franchise does that, and something I really like about the title is that they stick out. They're unique. They're not like every other franchise with their titling conventions, and also it just follows tradition. I've seen people say they should have just called the new one Kingdom of the Apes. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is too long. Again, that's just what the other 3 are called. It's part of the tradition. It's part of the franchise's history, and the franchise is called Planet of the Apes, not of the Apes. That's just not how things work. That's not how titling conventions work, and also it's just bad marketing to do things like that. And so that is addressing the repetitive nature. I don't necessarily disagree that it's repetitive, I just don't see why it's an issue. So moving on from the actual titling conventions in general and that whole side of the conversation, something I also want to address is, and this is the one I actually more so wanted to address, is the specific titles of Rise, Dawn, and War. So many people know this. I've seen many people say this, so I'm sure most of you, if not a good amount of you, are even aware of this. But over the last few years, as the trilogy has gained more and more of a fan base, more people have watched it, and this was even going on when the movies were coming out, but more and more people have come around to saying this and feeling this way, is that Rise, Dawn, and War are all titled incorrectly. And the two things I always see is that Dawn should come before Rise, which doesn't really make that much sense. I don't understand that argument at all. Like, why does a dawn automatically come before a rise? It just seems like such a weird thing to get hung up on. But the other thing I always see is the specifically saying that it should have been Dawn first, then War, then Rise, meaning Dawn should have been the title of Rise of the Planet of the Apes, War should have been the title of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and then Rise should have been the title of War for the Planet of the Apes. No! On a surface level, I do actually understand where this argument comes from. When you just look at these titles presented on a very surface level, yeah, I can understand that. Dawn is the first one. It's the dawn of the Planet of the Apes. The War being the actual physical war you see happening in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes would be the title, War of the Planet of the Apes. And then Rise being the third one, kind of sending off the trilogy with its final send-off and final ascent into the actual Planet of the Apes. You know, it's the rise of the Planet of the Apes. So I understand on a surface level why some people have made this argument, but I just don't agree. I strongly don't agree. And I think the movies were titled exactly as they should have been titled, and I'm going to tell you why. So with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, people often say, again, that it should have been Dawn. Dawn should have been first. And again, on a surface level, I somewhat that argument, but the movie is about Caesar's rise from child to leader of the ape revolution. It is about him becoming the leader. It's about his journey and his arc. That is the main core crux of what makes that movie beloved by so many people. That entire heart and soul of the movie is Caesar's journey, Caesar's arc, Caesar's rise. And so I think that is perfectly fitting for the title. The next one we have is Dawn, which people say, oh, it should have been called War, which, again, surface level, I get the argument. There's an actual war happening in the movie. But when you actually look at what Dawn is, what it's about, and where it takes place in the entire timeline, Dawn is a perfectly fitting title because this is the true dawn of ape civilization. It's the dawn of the human-ape conflict that is going to shape the next several centuries of the Planet of the Apes timeline. This is the dawn of the new era. It's the dawn of a new civilization. It's the dawn of everything that is going to be the status quo moving forward in human and ape history. And so I think Dawn is a perfectly fitting title. I really just don't understand the argument that Rise and Dawn should have been flipped or that War should have been the second film. You know, it just doesn't make sense. And that's why I think Dawn is a perfectly fitting title. And then finally moving on to War for the Planet of the Apes. And I actually talked about this in my review for War for the Planet of the Apes. And often people say, oh, it shouldn't have been called War. It's a misleading title. There's not even that much action in it. There's not any battle scenes in it. It's more just a drama. It should have been called like Escape or Prison Break of the Planet of the Apes, right? And again, it just goes back to my argument that that's, I think, a very surface level way of looking at the title and looking at the movie, because War for the Planet of the Apes is absolutely a war movie. It's not a traditional war movie, but it is a movie that is about war from beginning to end. The story takes place during a war. It is talking about war themes. It is talking about the horrors of war, what war can do to people, and why ultimately war is not the answer. It is talking about all these things throughout the entire movie. It is using war as its backdrop. It's using so much war imagery. And so when people say this movie should have been titled something else or that calling it War was misleading, truthfully, I think just our general perception of what a war movie is or what a third act finale to a franchise is plays a big role in why this argument has continued to persist throughout the fan base and persists throughout film discussion anytime these movies are brought up. And so that is why I believe that War, as well as Rise and Dawn, are perfectly fitting titles for their respective movies. This is something that I see all the time and I've seen for a very long time, and so I wanted to address it, give my thoughts. But if you don't agree with me, that's totally cool. I want to hear what you think. Do you think my justification and my defense of these titles makes sense? If you disagreed with me, did it change your mind? If If not, let me know what your actual thoughts are and maybe some rebuttal to my points. Also, same goes for the length of the titles and the repetitive nature of them. I want to hear what you guys have to say about this. I think that this is generally a conversation that is more had in the mainstream when it comes to these movies and had among general film fans who aren't like diehard Planet of the Apes fans, but still I definitely see it among the fans as well. So I want to hear what you guys have to say. Do you think these arguments just in general are valid, or do you think that I'm right and that these are all for the most part nonsense? But I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Thank you so much for checking out today's video here on Ape Nation. If you liked this video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on all things apes. I'll catch you in the next one, so until then, goodbye.